town, or Long Beach Island, New Jersey, right above Atlantic City. And, it turns out that my brother's an alcoholic, my sister's an alcoholic. We had mad chaos growing up in our house. I mean, I just thought it was fun. I'm the youngest. My sister's 11 years older than me, and my brother is 7 years older than me. And we grew up. We had a full liquor cabinet. We had beer. We had wine. And I think everybody has this perception of alcohol, especially when they're a little kid. And I would be that kid at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and everybody would be drinking, and everybody kind of come together. And I was a pretty young kid running around drinking floaters. There'd just be stuff laying around. I'd be like, and I didn't feel really feel the effects of alcohol until I was fourth grade summer going into fifth grade. And I actually picked out what I was going to drink, how I was going to do it. I'll tell you, it changed my life forever. It did. I'm one of those people that believe that I was born with a spiritual malady. I know it. Looking back, I was just that kid that just nothing ever satisfied me. My parents could give me everything in the world, and I would turn around and be like, "Is that it?" I just was never satisfied. Always felt just weird, and everything on the outside seemed real good. I was in scouts, I was in sports, I was in all sorts of different clubs. Everything on the outside looked really good. But I was a kid that just lived on the inside, always. I'm up here. I'm in the command center, up in my head, and where alcoholism lives and breathes. And what alcoholism really wants to do with a guy like me is just separate me and get me alone and torture me. And I remember I took 2 bottles of Riunite wine, peach Riunite wine. Now, I don't think it's wine, but it's something. My mom had like a whole bunch of it, so I'm like, she's not gonna miss 2 bottles. My mom was definitely an Al-Anon candidate back then, seriously, because I was like, how could she not see 2 bottles of wine down her little kid's pants? But I stuffed them down there, and we're in the minivan, and she drops me off, and I remember everybody was going to the movies at night. Back then, going to the movies was the big thing, and it was June, everybody was getting out of school, and it was just a fun time, and everybody was bringing alcohol. And I'm like, I'm bringing alcohol. And as soon as my mom pulled away, I was like, boom! I was like, oh! And people were like, Little Banning? And I didn't know my brother was there. And out of nowhere, all I feel is, poof! My brother gives me a gut shot and takes one of the bottles. So I'm already down 1 bottle. And I just remember, I'm all up in my head. All up in my head. I'm like, how it's just racing with what they think of me. Am I going to fit in? All this stuff. And I had this mad obsession with my brother's girlfriend. And never verbalizing it, but just, up in my head thinking about it. And I remember I cracked open that bottle of wine, and I got a good old chug, man. Big old chug, biggest chug I've ever taken. And that feeling that comes over you, that warm feeling, everything's gonna be all right feeling, right? What makes me an alcoholic feeling? And I just remember I got about 1/3 of that bottle down, and I was just like, oh! I was right next to my brother's girlfriend, Val, and I was like, you want to get with a younger guy? Acting crazy. And I wound up drinking half of that bottle, getting beat up by my brother in front of everybody, face down on the beach, throwing up, and I woke up the next day, and I wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to do it again. But I was like, wow. Like, for about 15 minutes, I felt like the man. You know, and that night I experienced what makes me an alcoholic. You know, I started drinking, and I didn't shut it down until I got shut down. You know, from the very first time I drank alcoholically, I had the allergy. That is the thing that separates us from normal people. It's the only thing. I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous does not have a monopoly on spiritual maladies. I mean, I can just go roll around in Las Vegas and find a whole bunch of them. You know, and to be honest with you, it took me a long time to get to that fact, to come all the way into Alcoholics Anonymous, sit all the way down, and really get down with the allergy of alcohol. Because I just thought I was this, I thought I was that, you know, I thought I was a special case. I mean, you know, Jon Special, right? My first sponsor was like, you're a knucklehead. You're not special at all. You know, you know, and I'm gonna tell my story tonight, and I like telling my story because I believe I'm an expert at telling my story. It's my story. I'm 17 years sober. I've had a lot of truth about my story. I'm the sober longest in my family, too. But, you know, my mom's in Al-Anon today. Man, I tell you, Al-Anon just ruined my sister. She would, I mean, for the longest time, she'd call up and she would just be going at my mom, and my mom would just have this, like, this, you know, this feeling about my daughter, and give her. And finally, she goes to Al-Anon, and she's like, no, I can't do it. You're cut off. And it kind of ruined her, you know. Michelle's asking for things, but you know, my brother's sober today, my sister's sober today. Really grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. Really grateful. I have a good life today because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a good life today because, you know, I have a sponsor. You know, I have someone in my life that I trust, I respect. It took me a long time to get to that point where I could just come in and just one person, man, just one person I could just respect. And if he asked me to do something, I would do it. I couldn't respect anybody. I couldn't. You know, so I'm growing up in New Jersey, and you know, I loved having fun. And I'll just, you know, I like describing some of my drinking stories because this is AA, right? And I describe these drinking stories because, you know, I didn't get sober till I was 33 years old. And there was many years where I came in and out of AA. I went to a lot of treatment centers. And it wasn't like, you know, I heard the message, I just wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready to really take it all in. And I just didn't really understand alcoholism. I really didn't. I have a much stronger grasp today on alcoholism. Alcoholism, man, it's just, man, the book talks about it being the rapacious creditor, man. It doesn't discriminate, man. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter if you were a gangster. It doesn't matter if you were born in the hood. It doesn't matter if you're born in the country. If you have alcoholism, you have it and you're never getting rid of it. It's just that simple. And I just couldn't come to grasp with that for a long time. My idea of fun, you know, growing up, I grew up right on the edge of the Pine Barrens. I mean, obviously, you know, it's funny, like the weather in New Jersey is is very similar to here. Today I was like, oh, I feel right at home. It's like, it felt like Jersey, you know? 39 degrees, raining, or 33 degrees and just pouring rain. I definitely love the weather in Vegas. It's nice. Not the summer, but like other times of the year, it's very nice there. And I'll tell you how I wound up in Las Vegas, because it's a very interesting story, because Las Vegas was never on my radar, ever. I mean, who would really want to live in that city? There's a lot of temptation going on there. But I live there safe and sound today. I don't gamble, I don't drink, I don't use drugs, I don't take extra pills. And I say that because I'm proud of it. I am. I mean, the greatest thing that ever happened in my life is that I became physically sober. And I've had some great things happen in my life. I've had 2 kids. I got married. I started a business. But the greatest thing that ever happened in my life was that I got physically sober. I got separated from alcohol, from drugs, from everything. I mean, I was just a garbage head. Talk about heroin. I mean, that's me. That's me, man. In the end of my run, it was all drugs, all drugs. And I just couldn't, I had so much, get me to a detox, get me to a detox. If you get it out of me, I'll get better. I never got better. I always got worse. I would seem to get it together, but inevitably I always went back to it because I had no solution in my life. First time I ever drank Everclear. Who's drank Everclear in here? Oh, wow. Dude, love Everclear, man. God. Man, I don't even know if they make real Everclear anymore. Who remembers what the bottle looked like? I remember exactly what it looks like. 15 years old, okay? My brother's in college, Stockton State. I remember this like yesterday. 15 years old, it's Thursday. Thirsty Thursday, that's what they called it in college. And this place was, Stockton State, big party school right outside of Atlantic City. My brother's going there, and me and my friends decided to go down on a Thursday night. And we get down there. Man, I was like, whoa. I'd never been experienced to that. I rolled up, they had like the Bud truck there. They had like a DJ going. It was like, and I was like, I'm all like, oh! My brother's like, come here. He's like, I don't even know. Don't be acting crazy here tonight. I'm like, don't worry, Bill. Got you, man. Susie wasn't looking at it. I went into his room. They had apartments, and they had a big old round table with a big old bowl on it, with fruit and a big ladle in it. And I'm like, what is that? And they're like, that's Jungle Punch. I never had Jungle Punch. I had drank the Negriti wine. I drank some beers. I used to steal cases of beer from my dad all the time. Never became a big beer drinker. Liquor is quicker, And I remember as soon as they weren't looking, man, I was like practically in the bowl. I was like, and I went from like 0 to 100 in like a minute. And I woke up, and this was probably the first time I experienced like a brownout, where like you're still conscious, but you know what's going on. And I wake up, and I'm like, and me and my friends are in my brother's Volkswagen Bug trying to steal it. And it was like Laurel and Hardy, man. Like I'm in there, and I'm like, hey, I don't know how to drive stick. And my friend's like, put it in neutral. And finally, we were probably sitting there for an hour trying to get this thing to move. And then finally, as soon as we get it to move, woo, whoop, campus police. Now it would be state police, but back then they had like their own little police force. And he's like, hey, isn't this Banning's Volkswagen? And I was like, hey, don't call Bill. Don't call Bill. They called my brother. Another beating. But that was like the story of my life, my brother beating me up. You know what that did for me? It made me a tough little kid. I remember I was like my sister's punching bag, my brother's punching bag. My brother's friends would take turns on me. My sister's friends. My sister was 6'2". Yes, so she would just you know, always beating on me, you know, and but you know, God, I love the effects produced by alcohol. I love the way it made me feel. I loved, like, I just felt so carefree. I would just have fun, and you know, I'm so grateful to my first sponsor, because he was the first one that ever got me to look back on my drinking. The first one. And it wasn't because he was so magical or anything like that. I was just ready to see the truth. I was ready to look back on it. Because when I started telling him these stories, he was like, you think you're drinking normal? He's like, that's not normal drinking, man. You know, because when I drank that Everclear, I remember my brother's roommate came out and he had the bottle and he showed it to me. I obsessed about getting another bottle of Everclear forever. And finally, I did get another bottle of Everclear. I mean, I looked like I was about 10 years old, so I'm not going to go get a bottle of Everclear. You know, the way I usually get alcohol was, you know, my parents, they had a lot of alcohol at the house. They did. You know, fully stocked bar, beer, wine. By the time I was in high school, everything was locked up. But, I mean, you can't, come on, man. I would figure ways around it. And then they started doing the lines, you know what I mean? And then it was all water. I just watered it all down. I'm like, my dad don't know. My dad knew. He knew. You know what I mean? I'm watering down his scotch. Come on. He knows. But he's got to share with me. Come on, you know? So how I got my hands on my second bottle of Everclear, I'm 16 years old. And June, everybody's getting out of school. Everybody would go out in the woods and party. I'm sure they do a lot of woods partying here. And, man, I love woods parties. My God, man. Dude, like, I would go in the Pine Barrens. I would get crazy. I mean, we loved, like, stealing vehicles, just woodsing them, lighting them on fire. I mean, starting forest fires, whatever, man. Doing all sorts of crazy things. And, this night, all my friends, my friends were mostly normal people. They drank normally. I thought that everybody drank like I did too, which was another, you know, notion that wasn't true. You know, we all went out into the woods, and you know, it was like they had like a little a cedar creek that ran through the Pine Barrens, and everybody was gonna go out there and party for the weekend. They're bringing like trikes and quads and tents and like Coleman stoves. I'm not bringing none of that. I'm bringing a bottle of Everclear. You know, I mean, I'm not thinking about anything what they're thinking about. I mean, I'm thinking about getting like wasted, and I mean, that's how I thought. I just wanted to get there, and I always seemed to overshoot the mark. And you know, I became a living legend in my town after this night. I get this bottle of Everclear, and I remember and how I got it was I blackmailed my sister. I caught her doing something with her boyfriend. I was like, you just tell Jimmy to leave me a bottle. She's like, you little son of a... And I'm like, just leave it, you know? And I remember I went in the woods, I got the bottle, and I come running back into the house. I'm so happy. My brother's standing there, and I'm just going to crack it open. He's like, whoa, you can't just be drinking out of the bottle like that. You see what it says on the bottle, right? I'm like, I don't care. I mean, who gets a prescription and it says don't drink with it? I don't take them as prescribed. I just open it up and start heaving them down, you know? Everything I did was in excess, everything. I mean, there was one point in my 20s, I was on steroids for 3 years in a row. You're supposed to cycle off. I just cycled on forever, you know? I don't take steroids today. I know lots of people in Vegas that do, that are in AA. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to poke the tiger. You know what I mean? It's not worth me, my life, over taking some of that, right? But you know, back to the woods. So my brother was like, here's how you mix this. So he dumps out 2 milk bottles, dumps in half the bottle of Everclear, half the bottle of Everclear, puts in Kool-Aid, shakes it up, warm, and he goes, there you go. Now, can you imagine what that tasted like? It tasted like rubbing alcohol with a little Kool-Aid, you know? And I was like, oh, you know, because I mean, once I started drinking, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. I just want to keep it going. And I'm double-fisted running out to the woods. And I get out there, and this is probably one of the first times that I had a feeling that the way I drank was much different than my friends, because I get out there, and they're hanging out. They have you know, little fires going on. They're like kumbaya, whatever they're doing, you know. And here comes, you know, crazy Jon. You know, one of the things I learned in high school was that, you know, I was an athlete. I was a good athlete, but I wasn't like the best athlete. I wasn't the best looking guy. I wasn't, you know, the best at anything. So if you want to get a little notoriety, go with crazy. So I went with crazy, man. And you'll get some juice for being crazy, man. Hey, there's Banny. This guy's crazy, man. I'm like, that's right, man. You know what I mean? And so I come running out there, you know, and they're drinking like Mike's Hard Lemonades, Heineken. God, it's like disgusting, man. And they're like, what are you drinking, Banny? I'm like, have some of this. And they're like, oh, God, it's disgusting. And I'm like, drink like a man, you know? Totally disgusting. Nobody was drinking it but me. And I mean, I'm literally like lit up, you know? I mean, I'm like this 16-year-old kid. I mean, I wasn't a big kid, you know, and I'm drinking like some serious amounts of alcohol, and they're all like, hey, you know, there's so many pine trees out here, we can't set up our camp the way we want to set it up. And I'm like, and I get, you know, when I start drinking, I get good ideas. I get really good ideas, man. And the thing about when I'm drinking is that I'll actually put these plans into effect. And I remember my dad just got a brand new steel chainsaw, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna help them out, man. Now, they're not asking for my help. They didn't say, hey, Banny, can you go get that chainsaw and help us out? They probably wanted me to leave, and I left. And you know how, like, in the alcoholic world we're in, like, I'm thinking, like, I came back in, like, 2 hours? No. I left at, like, 10, and I'm back at, like, 2:30, because 2:30 is when the real alcoholics start the party, you know what I mean? Everybody else is sleeping. I'm like, you know, I'm like, let's go! And I remember I run back to my parents' house, and I get the chainsaw, and I'm in the garage. Imagine this scene. You know what I mean? I'm in the garage at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, fumbling around for the chainsaw, and I even started this thing right up. I even had the whereabouts to know to fill up the bar chain oil. And you know why? Because I knew I was going to do some cutting. I knew I was going to do some cutting, man. I love chainsaws, man. And I remember I ran back out to the woods, and it's like I said, it's like 2:30 in the morning. Most normal people are sleeping. Everybody was sleeping except a couple of people, probably like my people, you know, and they're around the fire, their little fire, and they saw me, and they were like, is that Banning? And I had this like little laugh, and I was like, and they're like, what the hell's wrong with you? And I remember I just like ran out, and I was like, and I just fired the thing up, and I'm like, going like this way, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, and I just start cutting some trees down, and they're flying everywhere, and people are running everywhere, and I'm like, yeah! I'm having the time of my life. I mean, I literally almost killed one of my best friends. I mean, how I didn't kill someone that night, I don't know. I mean, I woke up the next day, and like I said, you know, I became a living legend because of that. You know, people, they're still talking about that night. You know, and if I did something like that today, man, I'd be like under arrest. You know, back then, the game warden was like, hey, Banny, get out there and clean your mess up. You know, I mean, I'm 50, so I mean, I'm a little dated now. I mean, you know, back then it just wasn't that big a deal. And, you know, I cut down over 30 trees. And they used to call it Pickerel Pond. We renamed it Pickle Park because they had a nice big area to put their tents up, right? And that, that kind of sums up my drinking right there. I mean, those were the best times of my life right there. I had arrived. I mean, I was peaking, and I'm grateful that I got to look back on those drinking experiences with my sponsor and see that it's not normal drinking, it's not normal to mix Everclear like that. I mean, I'm sure other people have done it, but that's the thing is once I start, I just have little or no control. I don't know what's going to happen. I am not willing to bet my life on it. No way, man. No way. I don't ever want to go back to the way I felt because, my life, it seemed good. It did. I mean, I remember I always thought I was so put upon, blah, 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 My parents were good people. They were really good people. They were dealing with 3 morons, seriously. I mean, we were so crazy. They deserve a medal. They really do. It's funny because if you were to ask our childhood story from me, my sister, and my brother, okay? I'm sober 17 years. I've done multiple inventories on my parents, this and that, okay? Much different childhood, you know what I mean? My sister, still to this day, is kind of a victim, you know what I mean? I'm no victim, man. I'm the one that was, causing the problems. I was. 19 years old, I graduated high school barely, most good alcoholics. And, I get a full ride to play soccer in college, and I have no business going to college. No business. I don't have the ability to sit in a classroom and take information in and record it. I can't do any of that. I'm I'm ADD or whatever the hell they call it. I'm just always doing something. And I fail out. And 19 years old, I make a great decision. Now, right? We all make great decisions. Beautiful decisions. I mean, if you want to sum up my alcoholism, it's like a series of just crazy decision making and then doubling down on it and being like, yeah, that's a good idea. 19 years old, I get kicked out of college. And I remember my parents were like, hey, if you're not going to be in college, you're going to have to pay rent. I remember I was appalled. I was like, what? I thought you could live at home till 35. And my parents were definitely old school. They're not they're yeah, sure, kid. You can get a job. I was like, a job. I mean, I had jobs growing up. I had and looking back, one of the greatest things my parents did instill in me was a good work ethic. They really did. I wasn't a kid that sat around. I had a paper route. I mowed lawns. I picked weeds. Whatever, I did whatever I could. And, but 19 years old, I didn't know what I was going to do in my life. My brother's like, why don't you come down to Atlantic City and become a craps dealer? I was like, yeah. I'm like, that's a great idea, man. I mean, they're making big money. And so I go down there, and I become a big shot. Yeah, I go down to Atlantic City. I become I actually made a jacket that said JC from AC, Johnny Craps from Atlantic City. And and me and my friends, we even made a craps table, and we would play, and I would I was the dealer and stuff like that. And I was a really good dealer. I dealt some of the highest action games there was in Atlantic City. I mean, I opened the Taj Mahal. The problem is that I seem to have a little bit of a gambling problem. A little bit, and it wasn't like it was table games or blackjack or slots that got me into trouble. I mean, I did all that. What really got me into trouble was I started doing sports betting with Nicky from Philly. Nicky's a made guy. I don't know what I'm doing. My friends are just making these little bets. I start making bets, and next thing you know, I'm in the hole for a lot of money from Nicky from Philly. And I think it's funny. I think it's all funny. I just think, I don't have to pay Nicky. Nicky wants his money. And Nikki got my number and called me. And, my parents had bolted to Lake Tahoe. They moved like 3,000 miles away to get away from us. They still couldn't get away from us, But they, my brother buys their house. They're getting credit card applications still. There you go, I'm like, well, I'll just help myself to a little bit. That's such messed up thinking, right? And that's the thing is, I'm living the life of a taker. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to help nobody. I'm just trying to get what I can get out of life. And I'm scared. I mean, if you get anybody scared enough, they'll do crazy and absurd things. And I was scared for my life. And, I get these credit cards and, I just take it to a new level. And, I remember that one summer, I was like the guy. I'm like 20 years old with an American Express Platinum. I'm in the club. I'm like, oh, it's on me. It's on my parents, And $100,000 later, and next thing you know, strike force is kicking my door in. And I don't know why. They kick my door in, they take all this, all this stuff that was in my, my apartment, and I get arrested. And, at this point in my life, I have no clue that this is all fueled by, like, alcoholism. It's all fueled by alcoholism. All the other stuff, steroids and gambling and all this stuff, this is all just byproducts of, like, outlets to treat alcoholism. It is. And I'm doing everything I can to treat it. I don't know I have alcoholism. I just think I'm unlucky. I just think that I'm getting bad breaks, or I'm not a good enough criminal, Or I always thought I was an underfunded drug addict, That I always thought if I just had enough money or whatever, Nah, that's not true. So I get arrested, and I'm looking at some serious charges. I am. And I make front page of Lang City Press, Asbury Park Press. And, it's a scary time in my life. And I get scared for a little bit, that's it. But I'm not really willing to, like, come in and, and just change my life. I'm not, and I always seem to kind of, like, weasel my way out of things. And I kind of weasel my way out of that one, I barely did any jail time, a little bit, and but I wound up, I did have to pay all that money back. I did. That was kind of like my first amends, forced, forced by the court system, and I did. I paid all that money back, and this is a period of my life I started to kind of get my life together. I did, and alcoholics, man, we're very driven, determined people, smart. And I really wanted to get my life together. I did, and I remember part of the thing with the whole gambling thing was that the judge, banned me from ever dealing again. I remember I snickered. I was like, I'll go to Las Vegas. He's like, you're banned there too. And I was like, so I couldn't make a living. My friend calls me up, Josh, and he's like, yeah, start a landscaping company. I'm thinking, like, okay, cool, man. Maybe he'll bring me on as administrative assistant, something like that. Maybe $50,000, $60,000 a year. He's like $9 an hour on the books, and I'm like, oh. I went from making $75,000 to I'm making $9 an hour on the books. I'm kind of getting humbled. I am, and it turns out that the very thing I learned doing here is the thing I do today. So nothing's wasted in God's economy. Nothing. The common denominator behind all this, though, is that I wanted to stay sober. I couldn't stay sober. I couldn't. And I had all the reasons to stay sober. I did. I was engaged. I had a great job. I had a house. I'm living like the American dream, man. And I'll tell you the mindset that I had coming home from work. I want to drive my truck into oncoming traffic. and that was like sober, So I'm experiencing like the worst part of alcoholism, because either you're going to treat alcoholism with alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, food, whatever, man. You're going to treat it with something, right? Or you're going to treat it with a spiritual program, or it's just abstinence. And abstinence is the worst because your head just kind of works on you, all the things you've done in your life, it just keeps replaying it. You're a piece of crap, man. Look what you did, man. Kill yourself. You know what I mean? It's like telling you stuff like that, I just didn't know what to do, man. I mean, I had a great life. I did. I'm making good money. I remember one day, and I relive this day for the rest of my life, and I made amends for this, but I mean, it haunts me because I have kids. I was so strung out, and I'm like, I don't know where to get money. And I remember I went over to my brother's house. He wasn't home. He was at work. Maria was doing something. She was out. The kids were there. And I basically pushed my nieces and nephews out of the way and took all their piggy banks. And I remember I'm loading them in my truck. And I don't feel nothing, man. Nothing. And I'm down at Commerce Bank and I'm dumping it in there. And my little niece Corinne calls me. And she goes, "I forgive you." And I'm like, whew. For 1 second, I was like, wow, I just crossed the line. And then, right back into like obsession mode. And it overrides any other thought. And I ripped my nieces and nephews off. And I couldn't even imagine doing that to my kids today, I got 2 little girls, and my kids have never seen me take a drink or a drug. They see me act poorly, but they've never seen me drunk, thank God. And I just think about that. It drives me nuts, man. And I was able to make amends to those kids. I was. I made it right with them, and they love Uncle Johnny. They do. And they're probably... A couple of them are probably potential alcoholics. I don't know. I mean, they might be. They're only in their 20s, so sometimes it takes a little longer than others. But I want to be the best example that I can show them about Alcoholics Anonymous. That Alcoholics Anonymous, is an attractive program. That's why when you always got to remember, people are watching. People are watching, and I went downhill spiral real fast, and I'm kind of glad I found drugs, because it took me to my knees fast. It did, real fast, I went from having all this stuff, being in charge of a lot of people, man, in a company, to I'm homeless. And I'm living in Josh owned a bunch of houses, and I would just, live in there with no electric, nothing, just, how it is. I mean, if you've been there, it's a really lonely life. Nobody, I love when Clancy would say, he had no friendly direction. And it's, the only way you're going to come into AA and do AA is if you're just wiped out. Nobody wants to come into AA. Come on, man. Like, seriously, I remember coming to meetings and I was like, these guys are idiots. Losers, man. Sitting around a table complaining about their life. They weren't really complaining about their life. I mean, that's my perception of what was going on. I was also in my 20s and I just wasn't really ready to hear what I need to hear, and I got in a lot of trouble. I did. Last time I got arrested, I got arrested on some serious charges. Home invasion, just some crazy stuff. My parents wouldn't talk to me anymore. Nobody in my family would talk to me anymore. I had a really lonely life. And I almost felt better when they arrested me. I did. Almost some relief because I was like, "Jeez, man, like maybe I'll get better now." And man, who's detoxed in jail here? Oh, wow. I mean, whew. Because I remember when I got locked up, they're like, "Hey, tell them it's alcohol," and I was like, "I don't drink. I'm a junkie." Well, let me tell you what COs think of junkies, at least in New Jersey, I remember my brother told me later on that he knew some of the COs, and they called him and they're like, "Hey, you want us to rough them up?" My brother's like, "What? Like, why?" Yeah, it was the worst detox ever, but I needed that. I needed that detox. I did, and it wasn't going to be like the last time I got wasted. It wasn't, but I can tell you this: like I was kind of inching closer to a surrender. Like God's already starting to move me in directions I don't want to move. And you know how that is. When God's moving you in directions you don't want to move, man, it's painful. It's painful, man. It's real painful, and that's my life was just painful. And I'm locked up, and I'm in there for a while, and I got a big bail, and I got the public pretender telling me everything's gonna be all right, and like most parents believe too, and sometimes it's true. My mom and dad were like, "You're better locked up. You're better locked up." Not at my level, man. I have 6 felonies on my record. Like that was right on the cusp of doing state time, and then I've worked with a lot, of guys from prison, and most people who do more than 3 years, man, it's real hard to work with them. It really is. It's almost like they become institutionalized, because it's a different world in there. It truly is. But, by some miracle, one of my friends bails me out, and I'm such a taker, man. I really am. I'm like praying, the little foxhole prayers, "God, please get me out of here." And then as soon as they're like down and out banding, I'm like, "Oh!" And I remember as soon as I walked out, I saw who it was. I'm like, "Sucker." That's what I'm thinking, and Mike takes me home, and this guy's trying to help me, and how I repay him? I was locked up for 9 months in county jail, so I'm stark raving sober. You know what I mean? You know what that means? Like you're just, no solution. All the court cases are pending. You're playing it out in your head. You're going nuts. I need something, right? I love when my sponsor talks about running through the medicine cabinet. Oh, yeah. As soon as I get to Mike's house, what do you think I did? I go, open up. Oh, God. There was a bottle of codeine this big. I was like, oh. You know what I mean? And who thinks like this? Like, I'm just going to sip on it. Like a Mai Tai. I'm going to sip on it like a Mai Tai, I don't sip on it, man. I drink the whole thing. I'm totally trashed. I'm smoking cigarettes in the house. I'm burning his couch up. His wife comes out. She goes, "Get him out of here." And I was like, "Where am I going to go?" She's like, "Get him out of here with his 2 hefty bags." Because all I had in my name was 2 hefty bags. And Mike throws them in his truck, and he takes me to Lakewood, New Jersey. It's in the hood. Yeah, good halfway houses are usually in the hood, and I mean, you can leave me, I ain't from the hood, okay? So we roll up, and I remember I'm like, I never cried when I got locked up, okay? I'm crying. I'm like, "Oh, come on, Mike, you can't do this to me." He's like, "Get out, I hate you." I was like, "I hate you too." And I remember this guy comes out, big prison guy. He goes, "Get in the house." I'm like, I remember I was just like, I ran into the house. I was like, and there was this many rules. I was like, "God, I'll get locked up again. Come on." He's like, "You gotta do this, you gotta do this, and you got to go to AA every day. And I'm like, oh, let me stop you there, man. I go, I'm not an alcoholic. He goes, hey, did I ask you what you think you are? I was like, yes, sir. You know, and I tell that story because, like, I'm inching closer to having my surrender. You know, very close. You know, I go to this halfway house. I'm trying to do the right things. I got court cases pending. I get a little job at a call center. The worst job you can have for a new guy. I remember I'm at this call center and we're selling warranties to like old people, like ripping them off, you know? And I remember I'm like, is this legal? They're like, don't worry about it, kid. Just sell them. Come on, you know? And I'm trying to do the right things, man. I'm going to meetings. I get a sponsor. He's like 80 years old, you know? Yeah, he would take me out, buy me burgers and stuff like that. And every day, man, something's going by at that call center, you know, little airplane bottles, pills, powder, whatever. It's all going by, you know. And I have no defense against that first one. I don't. I just don't, you know. I'm praying. I am. And I have somewhat of a first step. But the thing is that the first step will only take you so far. You know, it's it, man. It's lit. The fuse is lit, okay? And everybody's fuse is a little bit longer than others, you know. And, you know, if you don't go through the rest of the program, it's going to be explosion. And, you know, I remember one day, man, I'm just in there and I'm crazy. You know, I don't know what to do. You know, and 2 bottles of little 100 Wild Turkey goes by. And I'm like, that's a good idea, you know. I'm out on bail, 6 felonies. I got felonies on my record. That's total insanity, right? That just shows you that I don't have the power to say no. I don't. And then I started drinking. I drank 3 of them. I sold 6 warranties that day. I was like a different guy, you know. I went home. I drank a whole bottle of Listerine, and I thought I got away with it. So I thought, you know, I had set something in motion that I had to finish. 3 little bottles. Come on, man. I don't drink like that. And I came home one day, and you know, my finger got chopped off. $9,000 workman's comp check. That's like $9 million at a halfway house. And I remember the halfway house manager had it. He goes, you gonna do the right thing with this boy? I'm like, give me that check. And I was like, I was out of the house. Out of the house, bottle of Jack, ½ ounce of cocaine. In 1 hour. Wow, you know? I mean, just total insanity. You know, I'm driving around. I'm down in Atlantic City. I'm driving around the Taj Mahal. You know, my brother's was the head guy of all Trump properties for security. And here's his brother driving around, wasted in the Taj Mahal. When they found me, you know what I was doing? I was crawling around in the Cherokee, licking the floors. Because I had dropped it all on the floors. I'm like, you know. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, seriously, like insanity what I'm doing. And, you know, he takes me back to his house, and I can't get back in the halfway house, and I'm living at his house, and I'm stealing his bank card, and I'm doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And, you know, we finally run out of money. And I believe today that I had my true surrender at my brother's house. Before even I was already kind of in AA, but I wasn't in AA. But like I wanted to put anything in my body I could. And I mean, I'm not even kidding you. In a 24-hour period, I went from like, I want to put anything in my body to I had the strongest desire to want to stay sober. Man, I know today, man, that is the grace of God, man. I do not have the power to marshal that up. I know that. You know, and it's everybody has grace. It's what you do with the grace. And this time I did something with it. You know, I remember I went back to the same halfway house, and they said, everybody was like, hey, we're going to a speaker meeting. I hated speaker meetings. You know why? Because I couldn't participate. I mean, I would go to these meetings, and you have hey, any burning desires? Oh! And I would just be like, I just unload on these meetings. And like after the meeting, I get about 60 different directions. I wouldn't even know what to do. She says, the reason why you have a sponsor, one clear voice, just one person that you're honest with, one person that you're telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth to, right? And I go to the speaker meeting, Paul Kimball Hospital in Lakewood, New Jersey. I'll never forget it. And you know what's crazy? My mom worked at that hospital. Is it odd or is it God, right? Like God's just moving all these things around. And I get in there, and I'm all the way in the back. And Jim gets up there, and Jim's wearing a suit, and there's like all these guys in the front wearing suits too. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It's like Secret Service? And Jim gets up there, and he starts talking, and he's telling a story, and he nails me. He nails me, man. I start hearing the music of Alcoholics Anonymous. I start identifying. See, AA works through identification. That's how it works. One alcoholic sharing with another alcoholic, getting them to lower their sense of difference, getting them to take actions they don't quite yet believe in. And I remember I listened to this guy's talk, and everybody's lining up to go to, thank him. And I'm going to basically talk some trash to him. And I'm like, waiting. I get up there, and I just lose it. And I start crying. And I let everything down. I'm crying in front of all these people, and they're like looking at me. And Jim was a good member of AA. He pulls me up to the side, and he was like, "Are you an alcoholic?" I said, "I don't know what I am, Jim." He goes, "Good." And he got me a big book, one of the hardcover blue book. Opened it up to the doctor's opinion. He fumbled through all the pages. He goes, "I want you to read all those pages tonight. And then I want you to call me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp." And then he split. I was like, I just stand there with the big book, And I'm at a crossroads, right? Seconds and inches for all of us. Do I take the direction? It's not hard, man. Read a couple of pages in the big book. Call someone in the morning. He's already intercede my crazy thinking. I remember I went back to the halfway house, and I was like sharing with the guys, don't do that. It's like, hey, nobody can tell you what to do in AA. Yeah, right, dude. Don't worry about it. Get yourself a sponsor, I didn't sleep at all that night, and I called Jim 9 a.m. sharp. I read the doctor's opinion. I wasn't convinced I was an alcoholic. I wasn't. You know what I mean? That's why they say keep coming back. Keep coming back, man. Someone will eventually tell your story, Jim got me into the steps quick, man. He did. He got me praying in the morning. He got me praying at night. He got me going to a meeting every day, sometimes 2 meetings a day. He got me to move up closer to him. He got me to get a job that was more conducive to do a lot of AA. Because it wasn't about making a lot of money in early sobriety. It was about training my feet. Trained feet stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because let me tell you something. When they talk in Bill's story about trials and low spots coming, they're coming, man. Stay sober long enough, man. You'll destroy your life. I'm doing it right now. No problem, man. But I'm sober today. I went through the steps, and the greatest thing that Jim did for me was that he started taking me to detoxes. He started taking me to jails. He started taking me to all these insane asylums. I'm telling my story to a crazy bunch of people, And I started sponsoring people. First guy I sponsored was a homeless guy from New York City. Turns out he wasn't an alcoholic, but man, he kept me busy, man. I'll tell you that. I remember I kidnapped this guy, I remember I was like, "Hey, Jim, I got a sponsee." And he's like, "Good, man." He goes, "Take him to McDonald's and tell him you'll buy him a McDonald's dinner if he listens to your story." And I remember I'm telling this guy, John, my story, and at the end of the story, he goes, "You're crazy, man." And I was like, "Dude, you're homeless, bro," And one night I was like, "Hey, John, let's go for a ride." He gets in my Cherokee. I'm like, he's like, "Where are we going?" I go, "New Jersey." I'm like, I get the Jims. I'm like, hey, Jim, it's Jon. He's like, you brought him home? And I tried to help that guy, but it kept me busy. And I'll tell you, at that time in my life, what was going on was I had all those court cases going on. This guy was distracting me from thinking about all these court cases. I always need that in my life. I need distraction, because if I start thinking about my life, I will destroy my life. Fast forward, how I wound up in Las Vegas was, I'm sober a couple years. I get resentful at gym, and go figure, I met Bob at Clancy's 50th birthday, and I was just like, I remember when I met Bob, I was like, it's funny because I know Bob pretty intimate, but at the time I was like, hey, Bob, and Bob whipped out a card, and I was like, this guy's a rock star, wow, I live with Bob, he's not a rock star, great guy, you know what I'm saying, love him like a dad, you know what I'm saying, but, I was talking to him one day, and he's like, hey, why don't you move out to Las Vegas, I wasn't married, I didn't have no kids, I didn't have no big job, and I just packed all my stuff and a little RAV, and I drove out to Las Vegas, and I started a whole new life, and I love the Alcoholics Anonymous in Las Vegas. There's good Alcoholics Anonymous in Las Vegas, and we started that group, Connect the Dots. We have 4 weekly meetings, we have 2 speaker meetings, we have a big book study, we have a big book discussion. We're definitely, a 3 legacy group for sure, and I love my home group. I love it with all my heart, mind, and soul. Because I'm telling you, the longer I stay sober, I realize that, sometimes you need the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous more than anything in your life. Because sometimes there's no step that just fixes everything. Sometimes just showing up to your home group and saving face, man. Seeing how messed up you are. I met my wife, Brooke, and she was in my original home group. I went back to celebrate my 5 years, and boom, she's pregnant, and I remember Bob was like, how that happens, right? And I was like, yeah, Bob, and she moves into Bob's house with me. Oh, this is insanity, man, poor Bob, and she's pregnant, we didn't even know each other, and I'll tell you, I do marriage one day at a time, just like sobriety, right? We do marriage one day at a time, and I didn't want to get married. I was afraid, and I remember, I called Clancy, and he's like, kid, he goes, if you're able, he goes, every kid deserves to have a mom and dad. He goes, you're able and willing, you and your wife, you and Brooke. And I was like, I'm going to marry her, and we didn't have no big ceremony. Dude, Bob was my best man at the Justice of Peace, you know what I'm saying? That's how we did it, and we've been married for 12 years. I have 2 kids. I got to witness, I was right there to watch both kids born. If I was loaded, I would never be there, ever. I would have found a reason not to be there. And I was there for both births. I try to be a good father today. I try to be a good husband. I started a landscaping business. It became very successful. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to alcoholics is become successful. Because if you think money is going to save your life, think again. When I came into AA, I was so poor. When I got married, I was so poor. I was on Medicaid. I was on EBT cards. You know what I'm saying? I could barely pay my rent. I was doing little cleanups to try and support my family. And in a matter of 5 years, I had 87 employees. I had a pool company. In the good alcoholic way, I'm not asking for a lot of direction. I'm just I remember one day I was like, you know what, Bob? I think I have more money than you now, Bob. What the hell's wrong with me, And yeah, you know what I mean? I'm in, right now, we're in serious financial trouble. You know, and I'll tell you what I'm doing is I'm not sitting there trying to solve my problem with money right now. What I'm doing is I'm doubling down on AA. I'm showing up to my home group. I'm sponsoring more guys. I'm taking direction from my sponsor. I know I blew my life up. You know how hard it is to go to your wife and tell her that we're just broke? She's like, I already knew. You know, and the best thing, you know, the only thing that kind of saves me and Brooke is that I'm sponsored, she's sponsored. Because she went to her sponsor and tried to blame it all on me, and her sponsor was like, oh, hell no. And I was like, yes! You know, but in the end, you know, it's drawn me closer to AA. I never left AA. I was always an active home group member. I'm always sponsoring people. But, you know, I went down to 2 meetings. I'm doing 4 to 5 meetings now. I'm sponsoring a couple more guys. My prayer and meditation has gone up. We'll see what happens, you know what I mean? I know today that I'm gonna be all right. I know today that, like, I just gotta be honest, like, what's going on in my life, you know? We're attracted to each other in Alcoholics Anonymous because not how great we are, we're attracted to each other through our defaults, through our defective personalities. Why do you think I was so attracted to Jim? Because Jim was so defective, man. He was like the perfect guy for me. I could get honest with this guy. Dude, Bob is defective too, man. I love that guy, man. That guy saved my life, man. I'm having like a 3rd surrender now. But I want to thank you guys for allowing me to come out and tell my story tonight. You know, and I hope that you heard something that's going to want you to come back to another meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you.
Hey, John. John, grab him, grab him, grab him.